everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Tonight we are going to do our dinner prep. We are going to make a roast chicken, which needs to cook in the oven for about an hour and 15 minutes and then we take off the lid and cook it for a little bit more. And then we're going to be making cinnamon rolls, which of course needs rise time. So this is our part 1 dinner prep. So the first part is we're going to get our yeast blooming for our cinnamon rolls. So I have 2 cups of whole milk, and I'm going to add them to my KitchenAid, my stand mixer. I'm using my stand mixer because it is easier to knead the cinnamon roll dough than it is to do it by hand. And then we're going to be adding 2 tablespoons of yeast. So, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to sprinkle it over the top of my milk. So 1, 2, and then I'm going to add 4 tablespoons of sugar on top of that. And that sugar is just going to help the yeast activate. It's kind of like, a snack for it.
You have a question, why sprinkle it and not just dump it? Is there a difference?
Because I don't want my yeast to clump. Sometimes yeast, when it hits the water, it clumps into a ball, and then it won't activate as well because that inner stuff doesn't get to touch all the stuff that makes it get nice and active. So I like to sprinkle it over. That way it will foam up nicely and kind of bloom. That's when it gets really foamy. So that's 2, 3, 4. So I have 4 tablespoons of sugar in there, and then I'm going to give a nice little stir. And then we're just going to let that sit for while we prep the chicken. And when we come back, that should be nice and foamy. If your yeast is not foamy after you've set it in warm milk and with sugar, after 5-10 minutes, your yeast is dead and it won't work for your bread. So I've had that happen before, and it's always really sad because then whatever I was planning won't work. Okay, let's see. We are going to prep our herbs, lemons, onions for our chicken. But let me grab my knife. I realized I didn't grab it first. Okay. Before I get my hands all dirty, because when we make a chicken and we season it, we've got to get into the chicken and underneath the skin. I'm going to prep all of my vegetables and the seasoning. So we're going to season it with some fresh thyme and fresh oregano. So let me pull out this, and I'm just going to try to pull off as much of the leaves as possible. But we're going to leave the stems and the sprigs base. I'm going to shove those in the chicken cavity. So we won't be eating it. But what I put on the skin, I want mainly to be the little tender leaves. But the sprigs have flavor in it. They just don't have a good texture for eating. So they'll be great for giving it an aromatic flavor inside. There we go. And it's okay if you have little bits of it. You just don't want all of the big, stringy sprigs. There we go. So I'm just kind of going through and pulling the leaves off. Unfortunately, there really is no other way to do this than by doing it by hand. But it is worth it. Now, you could always use dry oregano and dried thyme if you wanted. You'd probably need about a teaspoon of each. Dry packs a little bit more of a punch than fresh, but I do love fresh herbs. I think it really makes a difference in elevating your cuisine. Okay. There we go. We're going to get all of these little leaves off. And right here, this is fresh thyme. There we go. Okay, that should be about enough. And then I'm keeping these sprigs, and then I'm just going to put a couple more over here to stuff the inside of our chicken with. And then we have some fresh oregano. I love oregano. It's one of my favorite spices and herbs, especially even dried. It's so great. That's just a lovely flavor to things. I'm just trying to pull off all of these leaves as much as possible. And I'm also will keep these sprigs as well to stuff in there.
You have a question, where did you get the whole chicken?
The whole chicken I got from Publix. It was a great sale too. It was like $6. Whole chickens are actually pretty cheap. And I think people feel like it's a daunting task to cook a whole chicken, but it's really easy. It's like a really no prep meal that you have to do. Okay, I'm going to give this a good mince up. We're going to try to chop it up as finely as possible. because we're going to be mixing it in our bowl with some butter and lemon juice and garlic. Okay. So we're doing lots of little minces. And what I'm doing to kind of do it is you kind of put your hand on top of the knife and then you just rock it back and forth. That gives you a nice firm chop down, and you also won't cut yourself. But it's great for doing the really small cuts on the herbs. Okay, so we've got our herbs fairly minced up here. So I'm going to put them in my bowl. And then let's prep our onion. So I'm going to take off my onion skins. The outer part's never good. There we go. And then I'm going to just cut these in kind of circles, because we are actually going to be resting our chicken on top of the onions and the lemons. But I'm going to save one onion bit to go inside my chicken as well. And this is going to be for our herb roasted chicken for dinner tonight. And then the same thing with our lemons. First, I'm going to actually squeeze a little lemon juice out, and then we'll slice them. Get that seed out, because the acidity will help keep our chicken nice and moist as well. But we're cooking it in a Dutch oven, so it's going to stay pretty moist. And then I'm going to cut this. It's nice fragrance. There we go. So we're using fresh oregano, fresh thyme, some fresh lemon juice, and then we'll have some garlic, onions as our main seasonings here. And then let me cut this one up. Okay. And then I'm going to put 2 of these lemons to go inside my chicken as well. And now we're going to prep our garlic. So this garlic is really going to be for making the flavor, like a very aromatic flavor to the chicken, not so much as like a seasoning on the top. Okay, so I'm just going to do a really light, simple kind of peel of it, because I don't really mind if some of the like the garlic skins are in there, because we're not going to be eating it. We're really just going to be using it for its juice, like the flavoring of the beer that we're going to put in there. Okay, got those, taking all of these off. And then we're going to have 1 more head of garlic. So I'd use 2 whole heads of garlic for this. And this is so that we're going to be pouring a bottle of beer in there. And as it heats inside the Dutch oven, the beer with the onion and the lemon and the garlic will just create like this aromatic steam kind of broth that will cook through the chicken and just give it a really lovely flavor. It's similar to like doing like a beer can chicken, which is just makes the most tender chicken on the grill. Okay, almost got all of these peeled off. And then we're going to put a couple of the garlic sprigs or the garlic cloves inside our chicken as well. I'm going to make sure my skin is off of those so that the flavors can really go in there. There we go. Okay. Now, before we get too into it with our hands, using my Dutch oven, this is, I think, a 5.5 quart pot. I'm going to lay my onions down under here. And then I'm going to lay my lemons. And this is just going to create a little base at the bottom of our Le Creuset pot or our Dutch oven for like the chicken to sit on. So it's not sitting on direct heat and like burning on the bottom, but it will really more have like those aromatic flavors. And then I'm putting my garlic cloves around here as well. Okay, now here's the beautiful part. Let's get our stick of butter. We're going to put, this is softened room temperature butter. You really need that to make a nice herby paste to stuff under the chicken for our herb roasted chicken. And then Did I have a spoon out here? Yes, I do. I could mince up some fresh garlic, but mincing up garlic is kind of a pain. So I'm just going to use a spoonful of pre-minced garlic. And then
You have some questions about is there any kind of schedule or set times you go live for people that have trouble catching them?
not really. We're kind of fly by the pants here. Like we're just our schedule's crazy here. So we got back from soccer and then I'm doing a prep and then we'll go live again in about an hour and like 15 minutes after we finish this. So hopefully you can catch that one. But again, it is hard because our own life is kind of crazy. I did add, for those of you, I added a teaspoon of black pepper and I'm adding about 2 teaspoons of kosher or like a thick salt. So this is a coarse sea salt. You want it to be nice and thick so that it will take time to dissolve underneath the chicken skin.
And every live is posted.
Yes, and every live we do post every live on our page. So I know people ask, and it's just so hard to commit because our kids' sports schedule and just life. I mean, we have 5 kids, so it kind of goes crazy.
Angel brings up a good point. She actually she has notifications set, so I guess they can set notifications.
Yeah, you could always set. I guess you can set notifications, and then you can hopefully catch me. There we go. So I'm mixing up all of this into our butter. So now I'm going to show you. We've got this really good fragrant herby butter. And this is the fun part. So first, before you grab some butter, just go underneath the skin and just stick your hand underneath it to kind of separate the skin from the chicken. And I do this at Thanksgiving for my turkeys too. And this is going to give you the most flavorful chicken breasts. So go underneath there. Then you're going to want to go underneath the chicken, the thigh, if you can get into that thigh as well. And just try to get underneath that skin as much as possible so that you can shove this herby butter underneath it, which is going to lead to a really tender and moist chicken. So I'm going to take some and I'm going to do the back first because it's going to sit down in my Dutch oven back down. Okay. Get it in there. And we're going to stuff it. And then what I like to do once I stuff it in there, I kind of massage it in there because I don't want it just a lump. I want it to kind of be as spread around as much as possible. And then it's like, there's a great thing about it is this all like cooks and flavors the chicken and then the drippings fall down to the bottom. And it just adds such a great flavor. Because sometimes roast chicken, if it's not flavored, it's kind of bland. Okay, now we're going in for the top part. And we're going to really put all of this herby butter mixture in here. And this is why I like the coarse salt because it doesn't dissolve at one time, meaning it won't just be salty on the top part. It will slowly move into the chicken. And so you've got nice flavors all the way through.
Yeah, question. Is this for tonight or tomorrow?
This is for tonight. So this is like a 5-pound chicken, which what I do is I cook it in my Dutch oven for about an hour and 15 minutes with the lid on. And then at 425, and then I take the lid off and I cook it another 30 minutes with the lid off so the skin gets nice and crispy. And then you just take it out and you let it sit about 10 minutes before carving so that it isn't dry. If you cut your chicken or your turkey too soon, then all the juices will fall out and you'll have dry chicken or turkey. Okay. Now we've got all of this herby butter in here. And what we're going to do is we're just going to stuff these little lemons, onions, and like the little bits of the herbs inside the chicken so that it has a nice flavor. And we've got the garlic cloves as well. And this will help bring that herby flavor all the way around, which is important for having a delicious all about chicken. And then last but not least, I'm going to put it in our pot and then we're going to tie up its legs. So we have it right here in my Dutch oven. And then you need some cooking twine. And you just want to tie up the legs. And the reason you tie up the legs is so that it doesn't fall down and kind of burn. It lifts it up and helps it cook a little bit better and more together. And it just looks prettier too. We're just going to tie this up. And again, you want to use like a cooking twine. So here is our beautiful, I'm going to take any of this extra butter on my hands and rub it on here. Simple. Let me wash my hands, and then we're going to pop this in the oven. Now, the trick of getting butter off of your hand is you got to use a lot of dish soap. There we go. Okay. And then we'll pop that in the oven at 425. So I have my oven preheated to 425. We're going to put the lid on, and we're going to cook it at 425 for an hour and 15 minutes. And that's when we'll be picking up our next stream. Is we'll take the lid off and let it crisp up and cook. And then that will be the second part of our stream. But after we put this in the oven, we're going to do this cinnamon roll dough, which also needs about an hour to rise and whatnot. So I have it in there at 425. I'll set my timer for an hour and 15 minutes. There we go. That will remind us. And now we can look at our yeast. I'll show you guys what it looks like. It is nice and bubbly. You guys are talking too much. Let me grab the chicken. I forgot to add the beer in. No worries. It's nice in there. So we're talking about the beer chicken. You put it in here. This is the last step. Sometimes my brain goes crazy. I saw the beer bottle on the side. You want this in here because you need a little bit of liquid in the bottom of your chicken. So you could use broth if you don't want to use beer, because otherwise all your stuff below it will burn. So this is just, I think, a 12-ounce bottle of beer. We'll put it in there. I'm going to pop this back in the chicken, and then we're going to do our, pop this back in the oven, and then we're going to do our cinnamon rolls. You can see the yeast is nice and foamy now on our cinnamon rolls. That means it is alive and active. Wonderful. That means we can make our cinnamon rolls. Okay, so for this part, we are going to add in 1 stick of melted butter there into our mix. And then we're going to add 2 teaspoons of salt. So 1, 2, and trust me, you need to add the salt. A lot of people think, oh, but it's going to be a sweet thing. The salt helps bring out the flavors, and it really makes baked goods so much better. And then I'm going to do a quick beat on these 2 eggs, and we'll add them in there. It's just a little bit harder for the stand mixer to break up an egg with the knead or the dough attachment, the dough hook. So I just give it a quick whip so that the yolks are broken and it can mix well. So we have our 2 eggs in here. And for those of you who joined us late, there was 2 cups of milk in here with 2 tablespoons of yeast and 4 tablespoons of sugar. And it's active dry yeast. I'm gonna have that start going. And then we're gonna add around 6 cups of flour. But I start and I do the first 4 and I see how it clings together. Then I do the 5th and then I do the 6th. Because when we scoop our flour, it sometimes is more packed than the others for our cinnamon rolls. You have to make sure you don't put too much flour in. So once I get to 4, I kind of really watch it. Okay. And then I see how it clings together. Because if your dough for the cinnamon rolls is too stiff, it won't have that nice, lovely spring that you want. Give it a good mix up. Okay. And again, I like to use the dough hook for this because we're making a double batch of cinnamon rolls because we're a big family and that's a lot of kneading to do to bring all this together. And I'm using all-purpose flour, but I've also done it with bread flour, and they're both very similar results, both absolutely delicious. These are like my family's favorite. I make them every Thanksgiving. On Thanksgiving Day, half my family goes out and runs the Boulevard Bolt here, which is like a 5-mile run. It's called the Turkey Trot. I used to run it, and then I think the last time I stopped running it, I was like 8 months pregnant with one of my kids, and I was like, yes, I can get out of running this. But I wake up early and I make it so that when they get back from their 5-mile run, that they have nice hot cinnamon rolls. And it is everybody in my family. And that's when I do it, I make a quadruple batch. I make about 60 cinnamon rolls. Okay, we're gonna add a little bit more at a time because this is our going into our 6 cup. And you just wanna make sure you don't have a stiff dough. It needs to be soft and malleable. So I'm just adding a little bit at a time and letting it knead into the flour. Also, the more you knead your bread, the more the gluten chains break, which gives you a much nicer, softer bread or dough, and then leads to softer cinnamon rolls. Okay. See how this is going. And we're gonna knead it, working around slowly, incorporating the flour. And do a quick knead. And then let's see. You want it to be where it's just slightly sticky, but not like completely sticking to your hands. So we've got a good part where it's just about right. So we're gonna take it out of our stand mixer, put our dough hook over here. And then you've got to do a couple kneads on your own. I always say the dough mixer is great for a good start, but it needs about 2 to 3 minutes of just a good knead. So we're going to put this in here. We're going to reuse our bowl because we're going to have it rise in here. And what I like to do for my rising, my oven has a bulk rise set or a proofing thing, a bread proofing, which keeps my oven at 95 degrees. And it is absolutely perfect for rising bread. But you want a nice kind of warm area to have your dough rise. There we go. So we're just going to incorporate it. Every time it gets a little bit sticky, I'm just going to throw a bit more flour over the edge and kind of incorporate this into it. Now kneading, it's a lot of work, but it will make your dough, your cinnamon rolls so much better. If you've ever had a cinnamon roll that is tough, like hard, it's because they didn't knead the dough enough. And so it gets really stiff. It doesn't have the good elasticity that a good dough will have. So just always make sure you give your dough a little extra love because it really helps with the breakdown of the gluten chains and makes for a delicious cinnamon roll. And for those of you who've never kneaded before, you just are pushing in your dough into your countertop with your palm of your hand, and then you're just kind of folding it over. So you're just like smushing it in. And that's why I said a dough hook can only do so much, but it can't really mimic a true knead. Okay, so now that we've got this kneading quite well, I'm gonna roll it into a ball. And then what you gotta do is put a little bit of oil in your bowl. And you wanna oil your dough because if you don't oil it, it can get dry and cracky. And that just leads for a tougher, not a good texture in your cinnamon roll. So I put about a tablespoon in there, not very much. And then I'm going to take my dough ball and I'm just going to roll it around into the oil until it's completely coated, just like this. And it's on the sides. So this will allow it to rise without sticking to the sides, and it also prevents it from drying out. Then I'm going to just cover it with a little bit of plastic, and we're going to pop it in my oven to proof at 95 degrees. And then we're done, and it's going to proof for about an hour, and then we'll make the cinnamon rolls, and then we let them rise again. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us for our part 1 of our dinner tonight. Don't forget to come back in about an hour, and we will be doing the rest of our dinner prep and showing the final product. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking demonstrations every day to show you how to cook, what meals we're eating, and what we do for our family. Again, thanks.